or anywhere where there is a Holocaust Memorial Museum to please take the opportunity to go in and experience it, because it truly is an experience, and it helps you become sort of part of the history so that you can then change it from then on out. I need to stop talking and start moving. Okay. This is a photo of the memorial in Berlin, Germany. I saw it recently after it opened. It has 2,711 gray cement slabs that are varying in heights, and they're sort of in this tight waving grid, and you can meander through them, and it's a very powerful experience to be there. But here I am today to honor the memories of between 200,000 and 250,000 mentally ill and physically handicapped persons who were murdered between 1939 and 1945 as the result of so-called euthanasia programs. We also remember the 300 to 400,000 individuals who were sterilized in the name of eugenics. They were made unable to reproduce in the Third Reich's savage and horrifically misguided attempts to counter the effects of, and here's a quote, countless numbers of inferiors and those suffering from hereditary conditions who reproduce unrestrainedly while their sick and asocial offspring burden the community. That's a quote from the sterilization law of 1933. The machine of the Third Reich is getting started. It's the law of the prevention of progeny with hereditary diseases. The ostensible goal was to purify the German population to eliminate handicaps and diseases. They used Darwin's theory of natural selection and applied it to humans. In animal species, we would call what they're doing controlled breeding. This is a photo that originates from a film produced by the Reich Propaganda Ministry. It shows two doctors in a ward in an unidentified asylum. The existence of the patients in the ward is described as life only as a burden. Such propaganda images were intended to develop public sympathy for the euthanasia program. Forced sterilizations began in 1934. They targeted those who were labeled as feeble-minded. For example, vasectomy, tubal ligation, and even irradiation were used. Many times, individuals were sterilized without their even knowing. This image originates from a film, also another film produced by the Reich Propaganda Ministry, and it shows patients in an unidentified, wait, let's see. I can find the quote, okay. So they're shown outside an identified asylum, and the existence is described as life without hope. The Nazis sought, again, to further develop their sympathy for their program. The sterilizations that they conducted were racially motivated. They were conducted on those, also conducted on those who were considered asocial, homosexual. But most people sterilized were Aryan Germans, actually, because they were wanting to cleanse the German population from disabilities and hereditary diseases. Most people who were sterilized were patients in mental hospitals. To maintain a facade of legality, some 200 hereditary health centers were set up. Doctors were required to report all known hereditary diseases. Unfortunately, infants and young children were targeted, and quite often infants were killed at birth. The marriage law of 1935 required that couples provide proof that any children would not be afflicted with a hereditary disability. I don't know how you do that, but that's what was required. Here's some more propaganda. This is a slide taken from a film strip promoting euthanasia. It was prepared for the Hitler Youth. The captain says, mentally ill Negro, 16 years in an institution costing 35,000 Reichsmarks. The place and the date of that photo is uncertain. And this photograph has the caption, because God cannot want the sick and ailing to reproduce. This image originates from another film. It aimed to develop, to further develop public sympathy for that euthanasia program. So they were targeting not only sterilization, but also euthanasia, which we'll get to in just a second. These are some personnel of the T4 program, the agency that was created to administer the Nazi euthanasia killings. And that was taken in Berlin, Germany, but the date is uncertain. To formally administer mercy deaths to the incurable, and that's a quote, the T4 euthanasia program was instituted in 1939. It was named after the street address of the program office, which was Tiergartenstrasse 4. I'll say 4 in English. I don't speak German. Physicians were empowered to commit euthanasia. So they were given the go-ahead to kill people that they believed to be disabled or physically unfit. War was Hitler's opportunity to implement his euthanasia program. The upheaval of war, coupled with the diminished value of human life, made it possible for him to carry out such a plan. It was initially a secret program, but it was a secret that was awfully difficult to keep, especially when they were slaughtering people in these asylums, taking ashes and throwing them into urns, sending them to families. People who had a male relative killed would find hairpins in the ashes, or the cause of death would be labeled as appendicitis when they knew that the person had their appendix taken out years before. It became evident that this was just a cover. Physicians were the main soldiers of the euthanasia army. Dr. Karl Brandt headed the program, and all adult patients in sanatoria or asylums and nursing homes were targeted. Data were collected on those individuals, and the reports were reviewed by a commission of physicians, psychiatrists who never saw the patients. And they would issue a mercy or a death sentence by placing a mark on the file. So, for example, a team of 3 doctors would look at a file, and they would each place a red plus, which meant this patient should die. They would place a question mark indicating the need for more assessment, or a blue minus indicating against killing. So if a file received 3+ marks, that meant that person should be killed. Those who were doomed were typically bused to killing centers. Hartheim, Sonnenstein, Grafeneck, Bernburg, Hatamor, and Brandenburg were the main killing centers in the beginning. Lethal injection was used at first. Then people were gassed, initially with carbon monoxide, and the fake communal showers that you saw in the film earlier. These were ultimately prototypes of the kind of killing chambers that were used later in the war as part of Hitler's final solution to the to the Jewish problem. Sort of a German problem. As part of Hitler's final solution to the Jewish problem. Between January 1940 and August 1941, 70,273 deaths were documented at those 6 killing centers that I named. Detailed reports also documented the cost savings to the German state resulting from their deaths. So they were doing the German state a favor. Here's an example of the cost savings argument used to win over the German people to this program. Dr. Edward Brandt calculated the savings in foodstuffs and money gained from the disinfection or the murder of 70,273 useless mouths in the T4 program. And it's larger than this. I've taken just an excerpt from it. So he said, on the assumption that the level of nutrition of the inmates of asylums will remain the same as at present, even after the end of the war, the savings in foodstuffs, in the case of those 70-some thousand individuals, with an average life expectancy of 10 years, would be as follows. And he's calculated how much they are saving by killing those people. In the end, about almost 142 million Reichsmarks. This is a photo of Hartheim Castle, a euthanasia killing center where people with physical and mental disabilities were killed by gassing and lethal injection, and it's in Austria. Here is a photo of the buses used to transport patients to the Hatamor Euthanasia Center. The windows were painted to prevent people from seeing those inside. Germany, this was taken in Germany sometime in 1941. When the 10,000th patient at Hatamor was killed, the staff celebrated with a beer and wine party. Some clergy, judges, and family members protested